ඔට මයික් එක තියෙන ඉතින්. බැලුවද නිකන් හිටගෙන කොහොමද කියලා? Shape නේ. No one can see it. පල්ලෙට කරගන්න. Yeah. Shape no. I stay down in the yeah. බැරි වෙලා හරි මොනවා හරි නිකන් මිස් වෙනවා වගේ තේරෙන ටග්ගාල කනට කියන්න.
A very good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are pleased to welcome you all to the International Research Symposium on Biodiversity and Sustainable Tourism 2022, jointly organized by Ministry of Environment and University of Colombo. Before moving to the proceedings, let us all rise for the national anthem.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Giving more prominence to our traditions and customs, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to light up the traditional oil lamp to commemorate the start of today's proceedings. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Dr. Anil Jasinghe, the Secretary of the Ministry of Environment, Senior Professor H.D. Karunaratne, Vice Chancellor, University of Colombo, Professor D.A.C. Suranga Silva, Symposium Chair, University of Colombo, Vidyajyoti Emeritus Professor Sarath Kotagama, University of Colombo, Dr. R.D.S. Jayatunga, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Ms. R.H.M.P. Abekor, Director, Biodiversity Division, Mr. Anushman Saikia, Officer in charge of IUCN, and Mr. Ramit Vijayatunga, National Program Coordinator, UNDP. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to officially welcome you all for this International Research Symposium on Biodiversity and Sustainable Tourism 2022, I would like to invite Dr. Anil Jasing, as Secretary, Ministry of Environment.
Good morning to all of you. Reverence Priest, Professor Karunaratne, Senior Professor Karunaratne, Vice Chancellor, University of Colombo, Vidya Jyoti, Emeritus Professor Sarath Kotagama, Professor Surangadi Silva, Symposium Chair, University of Colombo, Dr. Jayatunga and other additional secretaries, Ms. Padma Abekon, Director Biodiversity, and all the other directors and university scholars, stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you. Now, as you know, biodiversity loss is one of the triple planetary crises, and when you put all three together, it's only a time bomb. And why biodiversity loss is important in this forum is because that we believe that biodiversity would help in tourism promotion, or rather sustainable tourism promotion. And we all know biodiversity is due to deforestation, habitat loss, and other anthropogenic activities. And among many other things, the biodiversity loss can, lead to extinction of fauna and flora. And biodiversity loss also can result in ceasing ecosystem services, which you all know. And when the biodiversity loss is compounded with pollution, and so with pollution, we are going to have serious consequences. Now, in a situation where this pristine environment is polluted and there's a significant loss in biodiversity, why should tourists visit Sri Lanka? There's no reason, because Sri Lankan attraction is not Bangkok attraction, not prostitution, not Singapore attraction, not theme parks, not Las Vegas attraction, not casino. It's natural, environment, and mainly the biodiversity. That's the main reason why tourists visit Sri Lanka. So that's why Bhutan has a niche market in tourism, simply because they preserve their environment, they conserve their environment, and in fact, Bhutan is a net plus country. It's not a net zero country, it's a net plus. I don't say that we can go there, we can reach those heights, but then, there are also other reasons why they can be net positive, net plus. But then, we see that we are going on a suicidal journey. And we think that, we can do anything and get away with. And so therefore, if we want to prosper in our sustainable tourism, certainly we need to seriously think about biodiversity. Now, just imagine about the most important animal, elephant. Now, I'm sure there may be representatives from the Ministry of Wildlife and Forest here. And we are talking about elephant corridors. We are talking about elephant ranges. Now they say there are about 16 elephant corridors that are disrupted. So what happens is, it's basic knowledge that we encroach into the habitats and we limit their mobility. So therefore end up in human-elephant conflict. And now just imagine, I don't think any tourist would like to visit a country where elephants are roaming in the streets. The value of tourism, or anything for that matter, is when these species live in their habitats and when we see them in their habitats, not in the zoo, not on the streets. So now it has come to a situation that elephants roam in the streets. And I don't know why now this elephant fences, we have been setting up fences, around certain forest areas where elephants live. If you think of a paradigm shift where you have fences around villages, what would happen? Then you allow elephants to roam in their habitat. And also that will, then the fence, the people would think that the fence is there, and they will try to protect the fence. Because now the fence is away from this thing, livelihoods, the hamlets, and the fence is for the elephant. So the elephants don't like fence, and they try to sort of, if possible, to destroy them. And when the fence is around the village, around the hamlet, people take the responsibility, and they know when the fence is live, when you want to switch on, and when to switch off. And the other advantage would be that will prevent encroachment of areas by humans, because we identify area where people are supposed to live. So I don't know, I'm not an expert, but these are thoughts, because I keep on talking to people, and correct me if I am wrong, but I see that there's something basic thinking is missing, and we have been simply spending our own money on things that are not productive, and we keep on talking about human-elephant conflict. So that's just one example, and one major example that we can draw. So what about National Physical Plan? Recently sort of launched National physical plan where they start off from protected areas and then they talk about the mega cities and other cities and the industry zoning, I mean basically zoning. And there was one before this one, and nothing happened, and it was just a document. So, what we do is we in this country, we can say we have everything everywhere, and we can be happy about that. We have everything everywhere. You know, in decent developed societies, you don't have, supermarkets every half a mile. If you go to a developed society, you have to travel further. So that's zoning, right? So similarly, industries. Every day I tend to get various complaints about noise pollution, this pollution, that pollution. Why? Because we have everything everywhere. It seems that we are proud of having everything everywhere. So what about this national physical plan? I think these respective ministry officials and others must pressure the policy makers to do the right things, not to do the wrong things. And Ministry of Environment as the national focal point for CBD, we thought of organizing this international conference, workshop on biodiversity and sustainable tourism. That we thinking that we could do something. Now, with all good things about sustainable tourism, there are a lot of pluses, but in the meantime, you have to think about the adverse areas as well. Now, one thing is if this ecotourism or whatever booms too much, once again that gives way for encroachment, because you have to expand tourism. So once again, we should know how best we expand tourism. And then of course, with overexploitation of natural resources, once again, ecosystem services would come under pressure. So I believe that even these things would be discussed in this symposium. I believe there will be papers, in relation to those operational areas, not limiting to, the fundamental scientific research. And this, among other things, this symposium will deal with symbiotic relationship between biodiversity and sustainable tourism. So when you analyze the symbiotic relationship between these two, you will consider both pluses and the negatives that can be, so that you try to troubleshoot. So that's what I wanted to say, and also I bring greetings from the Honorable Minister of Environment, Mr. Nazir Ahmed, who is overseas at this moment, and also I welcome all of you to this symposium. I wish the deliberations to be success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jasingha. Now I would like to invite the Symposium Chair of International Research Symposium on Biodiversity and Sustainable Tourism, Professor D.A.C. Suranga Silva, to give the opening remarks.
A very good morning. It is indeed a great honor and privilege for me to be the opening remarks speaker. Honorable Reverend Professor Vimalaratana and the Secretary of Ministry of Environment, Dr. Ani Jayasinghe, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo, Senior Professor H.T. Karunaratne, Keynote Speaker Professor Kotagama, and all invitees and valuable guests, and the scholars and researchers. It is very important to having this International Research Symposium on Biodiversity and Sustainable Tourism Development. At the situation, Sri Lanka tourism is facing triple hit survivor. Triple hit survivor is Sri Lanka tourism is right now having slow growth but steady growth with multiple challenges. We have been facing as industry, first attack is terror attack, it's a Sunday attack. Second is COVID pandemic. Third is economic crisis. Biodiversity, and Sri Lanka is very popular. Now it is branded as a So Sri Lanka. Why it is So Sri Lanka? Because we have so much in so little. We are the country which is representing highest hotspots biodiversity, 34th highest spot biodiversity in the world. And we are the highest biodiversity per area of land in all Asia. So we are the best in all Asia. Nobody is going to challenge it. But Sri Lanka is still popular for beach tourism. So if you want to go any other country, if you ask from the tourists, okay, which country you would like to see, Sri Lanka, they are telling that, oh yes, Sri Lanka is so beautiful country with beaches. But we are going to lose that challenge, the comparative advantage, because of the mold disease starting new tourism. It has been now increased more than 1.9 million tourists by this year, by this time. We are struggling for 600,000 tourists, Mr. Ratnayaka. So we are losing that clean beaches. We have been seeing the polluted beaches, and harassment are coming in the beaches. But when I was in Maldives last month, we have seen that the beaches are very clean and very friendly for tourists, and no harassment, no community, in lot of badgering activities. So therefore, Sri Lanka must be focused on promoting the biodiversity tourism. Biodiversity means it is creating the prosperity and well-being of the human being, economic resilience, and successful businesses, and happy life for human being. If you can protect the biodiversity, it is the protection of the human being and all animals in the world, in Sri Lanka as well. So therefore, we are losing. We should not make another story of Antap. We have been called as a story of Antap potentials. As Dr. Ani Jayasinghe, Secretary of the Ministry, very clearly mentioned that you have a outbox thinking. Because actually now we actually encroach the elephant areas. Now we put the fence for them, and we are having a good life. But at the same time, we have been seeing that most of the tourism activities are actually making trouble for the biodiversity. So we have to ensure that all policy making and strategies, biodiversity is not an exclusive product. It should be an inclusive product of tourism development. When we promote tourism, the biodiversity must be protected. So that is right type of tourism. If there are something happen for the biodiversity because of the tourism development, that's the mistake of tourism development of Sri Lanka. So that has to be ensured. Because of the time bound, I would like to mention that biodiversity is, protection of the biodiversity is a very important thing. Now we are facing next challenge, that is very dangerous challenge, that is actually climate change. Climate change is connected with the biodiversity. If you change the biodiversity, climate is going to be changed. But we have been telling that post-Aragala tourism development is right now struggling to come back. But important thing is, if you can protect and brand our country as the most important country for the biodiversity protected and nature-friendly tourism destination, then we have a comparative and competitive advantage. With that message, I would like to conclude my opening remark. I must be sincerely thankful to the Minister of Environment, Dr. Ani Jayasinghe. You've been the Secretary. You have recognized as the University of Colombo as the most important the organizer of the conference. That's a great privilege for us. We have done our best within a limited time period. I must be thankful to my team, Professor Mubarak and Mr. Sampath Pratibani, and all these have done a great job, and Ms. Padma Abekon, you have done a great job, and your team, it's a remarkable contribution you have done. At the same time, we have actually got more than 100 abstracts, but we have selected only 70, and we have got 20 case studies and research papers. We have selected the best out of this. So finally, I would like to tell you the conclude. One time, tourism is considered as a panacea for almost all the problems. But before 2019, if you go to the tourism development, tourism has become a phobia for biodiversity and protection of the environment and the people, those who are living in that area. So most of the countries, they said, don't come to our places as tourists. But now it has been tourism is a very challenging task. So I think that Ministry of Tourism and Ministry of Environment and all academic, we are together, and the industry, if we can brand Sri Lanka as a country which is well protected biodiversity, green environment, clean environment, so this is the most important for Sri Lanka tourism development. With that note, I would like to thank everyone. I hope that this symposium would make a new landmark and new dimension for Sri Lanka tourism development, because UNWTO is saying that this year we must rethink tourism development. So thank you very much. Wish you a very successful day and very productive day for everyone. Thank you.
And next up, ladies and gentlemen, to address this esteemed gathering, I would like to invite Senior Professor H.D. Karunaratne, Vice Chancellor, University of Colombo.
Very good morning to all. Venerable Vimalaratana Thero, Emeritus Professor, University of Colombo. Professor Sarath Kotagama and Professor Suranga Silva from the University of Colombo, and Secretary Dr. Anil Jayasinghe, additional secretaries, ministry officials, university academics, all other distinguished participants, paper presenters. At the outset, I would like to congratulate 4 paper presenters who have spent their time, resources to bring their research up to this level. The presenting a paper is very, very important, but don't stop only publishing in proceedings. Please move into a direction of policy making, product development, and patents. That is one of the important things. University of Colombo is partner in this conference. I am delighted to attend as the Vice Chancellor. You have selected the oldest and largest university in Sri Lanka to collaborate all ministry officials. The University of Colombo, you know, is established in 1920s, and at the time we had only Faculty of Arts, Science and other faculties. But today we have about 27,000 learning partners, out of which 16,000 undergraduate and 11,000 postgraduate. So you can understand the strength of the University of Colombo. Now, why we are here today? Because the tourism and environment both are very important areas for Sri Lanka. Why Sri Lanka is facing crises today? According to my understanding, it is because we have not taken decisions based on information. We have not utilized knowledge and other type of technology adaptation in our decision making. We have not developed collaborations between organizations, and our networking is very weak. These are the main reasons why I identify Sri Lanka as a still developing country and facing the triple disaster today, what Professor Suranga Silva identified. If I just explain the information-based decision making, are we using real information to take the decisions? For example, in the University of Colombo, we have School of Computing. Recently I visited, many times I visited, and their research clearly shows that how to control this elephant-human conflict. They can do it easily. With the technological adaptation, we are still talking about fence. In other countries, they do technological adaptation. I know the similar issue in Japan, where the bear is coming to kitchen in rural areas. But they adopt the technology to overcome these things. If you collaborate with University of Colombo School of Computing, definitely they presented that the alternative model how to adopt technology to control elephant-human conflict in Sri Lanka. Sadly, we know in global news all the time, it is shown that Sri Lanka faced this problem as the biggest problem. Why? Because we are not adopting technology and we don't take information-based decision making. And we still adopt very traditional methods to overcome from the problems. What has happened after independence in Sri Lanka? We decided to horizontally expand our human settlements, not vertically. But you see in any advanced countries, when they are more and more industrialized, how they expand is they expand vertically. So which means that the land area they use is minimized. But our country, we try to grab government land as much as possible, do the maximum damage to the environment. So this is again based on the lack of information-based decision making. After 70 years of independence, still we don't have definition for what is rural, what is urban. What is urban definition practice here in Sri Lanka is people living in municipal councils and urban councils. Still that definition is used. That is totally wrong. No population statistics, no socio-economic characteristics used to define urban or rural. Then how can we talk about the environment? Or if you just type in Google, how much is the rural population in Sri Lanka? You just type and see, 81%. Even African country has more than that because of these data problems. And we don't use grassroots level data for decision making. We go for some other way for policy making. And of course, technology adaptation, I told you that earlier also, but we know basically what has happened to agriculture in Sri Lanka. That is not merely a production. Even in modern world, very recently we gave holidays for Fridays to cultivate urban population and the public servants. What type of failure policies we are adopting? Because the main problem of Sri Lanka is not the quantity, but the issue is there, the post-harvest management and transportation. So we never thought about that. We try to think only the production. So again, the technology and the information, we are not collaborating with the agricultural faculties, we are not collaborating with universities and taking decisions. There are many other things to discuss, but at this stage, I think 10 minutes have given to me. I will stop here, but at last, I should thank for Ministry of Environment, particularly Dr. Anil Jayasinghe, collaborating with the University of Colombo. You see that when there are 11,000 postgraduate students, they are coming to do research. So that is a reservoir. Why don't we use these 11,000 postgraduate students for research in many areas? And all the faculties, we have 9 faculties and 7 institutes, 2 campuses additionally. So which are human resource? They are trying to grab new knowledge. So why don't we use these things with ministries to make policies? So therefore, I think more collaboration needed, the Ministry of Environment and other ministries with the universities to come practical and timely important solutions in this regard. I hope today's conference is very important, that whatever you find in today's research, please try to implement as much as possible, make products and try to get the patent rights. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. It is my great pleasure to present the citation of Professor Sarath Kotagama, Emeritus Professor of Environmental Science in the Department of Zoology, University of Colombo, who is one of the most influential environmentalists and conservationists. I am indeed honored and privileged to read your citation, sir. Having completed his education both locally and internationally, one of Professor Kotagama's most significant achievements in the field of ornithology was the establishment of the Field Ornithology Group of Sri Lanka, also known as FOGSL, in the year 1976. Through FOGSL, he has succeeded in bringing together persons who are interested in the study and conservation of birds of Sri Lanka way before wildlife conservation became a mainstream discussion. Professor Kotagama has many firsts to his credit. Alongside the FOGSL, he also founded the March for Conservation, the Young Zoologists Association, the Sri Lanka Environmental Foundation, the Mihikata Foundation, the Mihikati Institution, and the semi-government Wildlife Trust. Apart from his interest in birds over the past 40 years, Professor Kotagama has worked on so many other wildlife projects. Owing to his experience in the fields of wildlife management and conservation, environmental science and ornithology, his experiences and services are sought by government, institutions, universities, and many other institutions and individuals. He has represented the country at many international fora, including at conferences of the parties of the Convention of Biological Diversity. He has many international affiliations through which he has been able to bring in foreign collaboration. Professor Kotagama has authored several publications, mostly on birds, and has made outstanding national contributions. Significant among them are the National Wildlife Policy for Sri Lanka 1990, the National Wetland Conservation Policy for Sri Lanka 1997, and the Strategy for the Preparation of the National Biodiversity Action Plan for Sri Lanka. In recognition of his outstanding services he has presented, He has been presented with many awards, including Love Nature Interpreter Recognition in 2015 and the Distinguished Achievements Award for Extraordinary Service for Conservation in 2003. In fact, he is the only Sri Lankan and the third in Asia to be recognized by this award. We have now reached the much awaited segment of the symposium, the keynote speech. Vidya Jyoti, Emeritus Professor Sarath Kotagama, thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. We will be honored to listen to you. Over to you, sir.
So I go on to all of you. Thank you very much for all those good words. It's difficult to hold the crown on the head now, so it's tilting. Anyway, I think we should relax. But I want to start. A lot of thoughts were given by the Secretary and the Vice Chancellor. I hope I will touch on them because they matter to me. But I want to start 20 years ago. This is where tourism was. We all talk about tourism and environment and all the problems, and the Secretary said we have a huge issue with climate change. Let me remind you all that we were the first in the world, in the industry, tourism, to respond for climate change. But what did we do? I will show you that poster, but I want to start with a song that was made on behalf of climate change and tourism promotion by none other than a Sri Lankan, Alston Cock, who is now in Hollywood. He was with us and then he went down under and then later on. Now all that is visionary actions that had happened in this country. But as was said by many before me, we seem to get lost all the time and not be able to bring things together and recognize that we have the talent. Even at this very point of time, I have to criticize it. If not, I can't be here. We are getting an expert from France to look at climate change, impact on tourism and recreation. Don't we have people in this country? Or is it just simply because we are being given that money that we have to get somebody from outside for that purpose? Why can't we change? I have been involved in the tourism industry since 1974. And all I can tell you is that we have lost everything, not for not any other reason, but always because we are placating outside and not inside. Look at all your plans. Where did we fail? And I will tell you, it failed because we never looked at the inside story from inside. But the Secretary was trying to say that. The Vice Chancellor was trying to say that. But we still do it. And we are doing it now. I even asked the people in the industry, what are you all doing? Should you not be saying these things? And it is happening. And we have become so Sri Lanka. Not from within, outside. And we are saying we are trying to entice people to come from outside, so therefore we need somebody from outside to tell us what to do. Subservient mentality. When are we going to get out of it? Male. Nothing. Only the sea and coral sand. We had everything and we still have everything. So, I will start with that. May I first have the song which was done by Alston Cock to remind us what we did 20 years ago.
If the world, with all its wonders, gives us pain without the rain, have you ever stopped to wonder, could we take this climate change in a land just like no other, where the mountains reach the seas? We must try to help each other make the change for the world to see. Deep inside there's a feeling of the way it used to be, and if we all get together, make the change, don't let it be. In a land just like no other, there's a place for you and me. We will try to help each other. We will change for the world to see. Did you ever know why the birds just flew away? Or why the leopard left his tree? Why the mountains keep falling to the ground when the wind just blew them all away? If the world, with all its wonders, gives us pain without the rain, have you ever stopped to wonder, could we take this climate change? Could we take this climate change?
Thank you. I think it should revive a lot of thoughts and think about what we should be doing in this country. Yes, we do have an impact, we do have a problem, but if we don't respond to change it by ourselves, we will not be willing to change it for the future. So thank you very much, first for all, for inviting me to give this keynote speech. Sorry to start on a pitch different. Biodiversity has been my forte for a long time, long before even the word was coined. So I have a lot of reservations about how it is being used, not just only in Sri Lanka, but across the world in many places. Since I had been involved in it for a long time, we were involved in trying to get together to understand what is this meaning. So I'll come to that. But let me go through a set of slides that I have just put together. Going back to 2019, probably in the early days, the tourism was at its peak, according to all the information that we have. You see that tourism contributes to outpace the global economy. All these things did happen. But we know, things started changing very fast, despite all the good things that tourism was doing across the world. And we ended up with a situation where biodiversity came into the picture, because the COVID is a biodiversity. It is a bioproduct. It is an organism. An organism that we can't see. And that has changed the world. And we had to wait till such a microorganism to change the world. So the secretary talked about our elephants. They are nothing. When you look at this thing that we can't see, making the whole world kneel down, and look at China today, how human mistakes are very well duplicated all across the world, and it's still happening. So it's now the time to realize that biodiversity does matter. It was the world's biggest industry, but it is not so today, but we hope it will be again, because people are not going to stop traveling. That is humans. Humans have always traveled, and humans have always conquered and gone from place to place, and that is what tourism is all about. And therefore it will not stop, but it will come back. And as you just said, COVID came in by end of 2019, and that's the result. This is Sri Lankan data, where it just crashed to zero. If it crashed to something, it could have been good enough, but it crashed to zero. The numbers tell the truth. 0, 0, 0, 0 all the way down in 2020. More than 300,000 personnel, industry, everything just didn't have a future. At that time, everybody was struggling. Families didn't have means for survival. We would say that because this industry we know is not a low income or low expenditure industry. It's a high expenditure industry. And the people also were living at that high levels, everybody. So all had to come down to the ground. And many left. And many of the industry personnel permitted them to leave to wherever it was possible, and most went to the Middle East, where things were a little under control or there was enough money to be spent, and things happened. So 2 years later, you have this narration where we are trying to recover and come back. Yes, Sri Lanka did start. We were on our way to recovering something, but as was mentioned by Suranga, the post-Aragala madness, I call it, uncharted directions, undemocratic, brought us back to square one. For anybody to recognize that when the tap closes, the tank gets empty, and you got to fill it back, you have to open the tap. But that we didn't recognize. In many ways, we are still not recognizing it yet. We had the industry, I must say very sorry, we had even the industry among the Aragali. And I did ask one of my friends, what the hell are you all doing? Do you think that this is the pathway to the future? It is not the pathway to the future. But yet, it was emotion, it was the unreasonable reasoning that took us to where we came. It will take a long time to recover. Just 3 days ago, we were back on news. And all the pictures in the CNN were the pictures of then. History doesn't go away very quickly. A big mistake, and the industry is going to suffer for a long time. You're going to have a big challenge to bring it back. But I know we can. But we need to think inwards, towards the outward. If not, we will be where we are. There are better places for people to go if they want to. And as was said, this is the Isle of Biodiversity. And if you don't recognize that, we are not going to get where we want to go. So tourism and biodiversity, mapping tourism and the global footprint has been done in the world already. And there is a recognition that we are somewhere in that picture. World's biggest industry on the basis of the contribution to global gross domestic product and the number of jobs it generates and the number of clients it serves, the scale of industry, and rate at which it continues to grow present both opportunities and threats for biodiversity conservation. Already some of these things have been said, but I need to repeat. Tourism, when properly managed and directed, can contribute to biodiversity conservation and poverty reduction, both directly by capitalizing on biodiversity assets and indirectly by reducing the vulnerability of the poor to environmental degradation through biodiversity conservation. We are looking through the window. When can we travel to Sri Lanka by 2021? But it didn't happen because we didn't allow it to happen. So let me give you a little bit of background as to what biodiversity is, because a lot of people still don't, not in this country yet. Our institutions are far back in terms of even realizing what it is. So as I said, I was in it from 1981. So I can claim to know what I am talking, which is not sweet stories for many. So therefore we don't get involved. There was no biodiversity as a word in English at all. It was coined in 1986, and not by a biodiversity person also. It was coined by an administrator who was concerned about the number of sheets of paper that needs to be photocopied. So he redefined the word biological diversity that existed, took away the logic, maybe the mistake, took away the word logic. So as I say, it may have been the mistake, and brought the two words together and made it biodiversity. And that was the end product. And it was good marketing, because soon after, E.O. Wilson took over this word and wrote a publication which became very popular, and that's where biodiversity became everybody's lip service. Nobody understood what it was, because nobody had defined it either. Even today in Sri Lanka, despite the fact that I had to tell this to my own professor, Arupragasam, sir, this is wrong. You can't put this in the advanced level book. To say that the biodiversity is defined in the Convention of Biological Diversity. It is not defined in the Convention of Biological Diversity. I will challenge anybody here to go into the convention and find for me the word biodiversity in the convention, because it didn't exist then. It took more than 12 years for it to become a word of science, to be accepted in a publication. For us who are here, who have done research and doing peering of publications, we know we don't allow just any word to be put in the texts. We need something to be accepted somewhere. So it took almost 12 years for this pseudo-cognate to be accepted as biodiversity. But it was very, very popular. And it had in it a lot of things which we don't yet recognize in this country. It is not just only the biological diversity that existed and is existing, but it is the conservation. We don't talk of conservation. Again, we lip serve conservation. We only talk of protection and preservation. When we get to the crux of conserving something, we will realize that it's a totally different story. And yet we are not there. And we don't even think of utilization. It is banned. It is not permitted in the law of this country. We are good enough to go and permit more than 3,500 people to die and more than 30,000 people to be morbid with snake venom, and yet not get ready to commercially produce it in this country, because the law doesn't permit it. This is the fact. If anybody wants, sir, I will give you the letters. This is the fact. And until and unless we change this, we are not going to get anywhere with biodiversity. With biological diversity, yes, we are there. That is the difference of the word. And in an August assembly like this, we need to be very clear about what we are trying to do. If you are talking of biodiversity for tourism, it is utilization with conservation of the biological diversity. That we need to recognize. So how can we do that when we are not permitting it to be happening? Biodiversity is the basis of our existence, our life support system. Air, water, food, all of that, much of this is known. The next couple of slides, which I will go through quickly, is about the background to the value and what it means to us. Why biodiversity is important to us. We have some things which are called direct and indirect, and Suranga will know very well the economic sides of these things, right, which is what we didn't know all these years. We have to thank the economics people for changing their attitude. I have been arguing with them for a long time. The hidden values they didn't know existed. They didn't know how to calculate it. Now we talk ecosystem services and economic values of services. In the good old days, there was nothing like that. I have had enough arguments with my own brother, who is an agroeconomist, and then we finally agree to disagree, and that's it, because he's my brother after all. But he is an economist, and I am an ecologist, and we are in two ends of the same place. But today we are very much in line. We know. But what is not there is that economic jargon has not sunk into our system, our planning processes, and we are far away from it yet, and we need to get close. Extrinsic, utilitarian, instrumental values, these are all alien to a majority, if not for the economists. What do they mean? And how can you put value for something that we say is valueless? Yet we have to, because if not, the people will not understand. And the more we get economized, then the numbers become important, because that is what we recognize. Very simple. We go to a shoe shop and buy for something for $479.99, $499.99, $599.99. We don't get the cent, but yet we decide on a 99. Why not? Because it's 500 now. That's what we see. That mentality exists, so we can't run away from the fact that today economics plays a massive role in decision making and thinking. We didn't like it in the past. Hard to protect our resources, our natural resources. So there are many indirect values. How do you calculate a value for spiritual and cultural values? You have techniques today. You have done it. We may not like it, but as I say, it is at least one way to get into the minds of the majority, who understand that today we are poor, today we are in a crisis, today we are hungry. To tell that there is no food, I don't agree. There's plenty of food. But still we are hungry. Why? Because we select what we want to eat as according to how we can purchase it. There on the fence is the vegetables. But we don't want to plug it on the fence because it is not on the table. So these are realities that we have to live with. But value aesthetics. You have valuation now. We are doing it. So let's look at all of these in a very different way. The goods we know very well. The food we are able to value today and put everything in place. I have a story here all the time. Those who are in the industry know that. And just a couple of weeks ago, somebody came and told me, so how long are you telling that, and still it is not happening in the industry? I said, I will keep telling it all the time when I go to the restaurant. Sri Lankan corner. When are we going to Why must it be Sri Lankan corner? When everything else should be in the corner and Sri Lanka should be in the middle. It is publicists who at least did that for us, not the industry. But a small man who thought that the polo symbol should be in the center. Can we learn something here? I used to say, even here, we'll talk about all this and go to the restaurant and eat Pakistan samba. Where is the red rice? It took many years for the red rice to come into the restaurant. When the kanda was served, we rejected it at the first time. For many years they said, how can we give kanda? You can give herbal porridge. Yes, we can. And that is what happened. So, think then we have this. We do things for the foreigners. Sure enough, don't bring these fellows who don't know to eat what is here. We don't have to import venison. We don't need venison if we don't have to give that in Sri Lanka. But yet we do it. We import things to be provided for them because thinking that is what they want to come and eat. We want. We want people who will understand the culture, the country, the biodiversity, because this is biodiversity. Where is the right Malluma? Put the words, give them this, and tell them what it is, and it can make a difference, because I know it did become a difference. So all of these are very important. Medicine. Now it's an industry part. We have hospitals, Ayurveda hospitals coming up all over. We talked about ecosystem services, water filtration, flood, all of these things are happening, but I take it. This is where we have to think about. Sri Lankan future tourist products will be in innovation from nature and biodiversity. It has always been there, but yes, it took some time. But now we should be looking differently completely. So a few comments, because there's no time, about the elephants. I'm very happy you just said about a paradigm shift, and I hope it will happen. I know they don't like what I say, but I am saying it. I was part of the 2006 policy for human-elephant coexistence, but today I say no, sorry. I can't permit to continue to observe 400 elephants dying and 100 people dying every year. The experiment is failed. The village fence, crop fence, yes, it still has to happen. But why don't we start counting how many elephants are there inside our protected areas? The Wildlife Department has 13% of land in this country under the protected area network, and majority of them are in the areas where the elephants are, in the dry zone. How many elephants are there? Why aren't they inside? If they are not inside, make the opportunity to make them be inside. Why can't we do that? The literature to me is very clear. We have not just only encroached their property, we have enhanced their property. Nobody tells that. We have created habitat that is chocolate and cake for the elephant. While we say we don't do anything inside our protected areas. They should be there. I take that stand today. There cannot be elephants on the streets, sir. The elephants must be in the protected areas. That is my stand today. When we do that, we will find that is the location for the tourism industry also. When I said that Yala is a high-end safari park, everybody went against me. But isn't that today? It is. 100% man-made. If anybody wants to argue, I will show you the facts. I, as Director of Wildlife, built 19 tanks inside. Other than the lagoons, all the tanks inside the Yala National Park, Block 1, are man-made. 400 hectares of land had been cleared in the national park for creating habitats for the deer that the people are looking at today in the early 40s. Now we don't want to accept it. I said, this is the model for tourism. This is the model to duplicate in another part of the dry zone. You get 900 million a year. What we are earning from that place. And you have today an industry that is totally dependent in the south, monopolized the opportunities of going into the park also, the jeep drivers. We can duplicate it. But you have to be manipulative. You have to understand that the biodiversity can be manipulated for tourism, for the country, for the people. That we need to get. We have to come there. So we have to change. And then when I say this, they say, how can you change? I said, I am a scientist. I will change. And if I don't change, I can't be a scientist. That is the reality of science. When the information comes, we need to change. We have the new information, so let us make use of that opportunity. Let this conference become the trigger and the starting point to tell the world what we have and why we want you to come here for that. Not to look at anything, not to look at the giraffes and the zebras. We have our biodiversity, which does not limit ourselves to the protected network. It is at home. Ecotourism, how many years have I been talking? Sir, we don't need to cut a single tree for ecotourism. Ecotourism can enhance that property that has been desolated and destroyed by our own people. But we must know how to make that product. And when that is done, it becomes ecotourism. If not, it becomes destructive. So, lot to learn. So, no time to tell you all of that, but thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Because we need to rethink, and this is the best time to arugula your mind for the future, not to destroy the country that we have. Let's pray that we won't kill ourselves again. We need sense. We need sense to recognize what we have and be proud of what we have. So I'm going to quickly go to that poster, because if I don't show it, this is the poster. Sorry. Right. That is the poster that was done in 2002. It got recognition by the World Tourism Organization in 2012. But nobody from Sri Lanka went to accept that award. She came down to Sri Lanka and gave it to us. That is a fact. You can refer it and find out. We were the first in the world to respond in tourism to carbon. But we were, I say, stillborn. So I want to leave you with an even more interesting thing. I always liked the land like no other. But we have something even better today. You have to say it to understand what it is, not to read it. Ella Kiri. That is simply say it and you will realize that what are you saying. It's the man's on the ground. That's what it is. What more? Authentic, pristine, refreshing. You put all the words and you have it. Clean, white. You soil it, you make the mistake. That is what we have. And that is what we should look forward for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that very detailed and informative keynote speech. And it is indeed an honor to have you here with us for this Symposium 2022. Right, so now, ladies and gentlemen, let us move on with the proceedings of today's event. And now we have moved into one of the most important parts of this Symposium 2022. The launching of the symposium publications. Now we have 3 publications to release today. The first one being the Book of Abstracts, and the second one being the Book of Case Studies, and the third one a special issue of Journal of Tourism, Economics and Applied Research on Biodiversity and Sustainable Tourism.
To mark the launch of these publications, I would like to cordially invite Dr. Anil Jasinghe,